Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers Inspiration. I hope you all are doing really well, that you've been spending your time consciously, paying attention to how you move through space, how you move through the world, what your thoughts, words, and deeds are, and if they match. That's something I learned long ago. It's the philosophy of yoga, that the union of thoughts, words, and deeds is what can give you peace, what can give you calm, what can allow you to feel that you are in alignment. And I know some of us find ourselves in predicaments where we think something, do something different, say something other than what we're thinking, and trying to mask whatever is going on in our worlds. And the reality is, when that happens, it throws us off kilter. It doesn't work to move through life unevenly. And what I mean by that is back to this thoughts, words, and deeds. Literally, if you're thinking one thing and you're doing something different, you're not in alignment, you're not centered. And it can get confusing, but more important, it can be unsettling, literally unsettling to your spirit. So in one way or another, what we do here at Dreamleapers Inspiration is to work on that alignment. And I've been thinking about a particular aspect of alignment and being in the company of others because of what's been happening in my world. And so I figure could easily be happening in yours as well. And that is, what do you do when things end? How do you handle endings? And I'm wondering for you, do you pay attention to endings? Do you pay attention to how you approach the end of a relationship, the end of an experience, the end of anything? How do you approach endings? Do you pay attention to them or not? What people generally pay a lot of attention to is beginnings. If you are going on a job interview, you dress up, you polish off your resume, you prepare. If you're smart, you prepare so that you know everything you can about the job that you're interested in. Same goes if it's not a job interview, it's a date. It's an application for a new place to live. It's any experience where you need to show up for the first time, the beginning of an experience. People tend to show up as best as they can. And if you think about it for yourself, you probably do the same. Because you want to make sure that whoever you're in front of can see you in your best possible light. So what happens at the end? What happens when it's time to close the door, when the experience is over or about to be over? What happens then? I went to a movie theater the other day, beautiful theater. And I don't go to the movies often, so this was an interesting experience. It was a beautiful theater with these cushy seats, and I got there early, so I watched people as they were entering the theater, and they were stepping carefully and moving with precision to get to their seats, being mindful of each other as they moved around. It was actually really nice to see how people were treating each other. When it was over, I was one of the last to leave the theater. And so the lights are up high, as they were when people were coming in. The lights were back up high. And as I looked around, the theater was pretty well trashed. People had left their popcorn boxes, spilled popcorn all over the floor, wrappers for their candies, cups, straws, napkins all over the place. And I tell you, right before that, when people had come in, they were so neat and mindful. And it was really terrible. At the end, all you could see was, it's over, I'm done, I'm out of here, and I don't care anymore about what I've left behind. Endings. It was a discarded moment. I had my experience. I loved the movie, and now I'm out, and I'll leave the mess for whoever's job that is. It was unfortunate, but common because people often don't pay attention to the endings. What I'm leaving. I don't have to clean that up. That's somebody else's job. It was an unconscious moment, an unthoughtful moment, an uncaring moment. What about taking care of each other? When I got to the door, just leaving, people definitely had some people had thrown away their trash, but the garbage was overflowing and stuff was just everywhere. It was not a pleasant end, the way that people had taken care of or the lack of care. And I thought, this could have been handled much better. That's a simple ending. It doesn't I used it as a first example because it's really simple. It's something that you may not be as invested in as something else. So I'm gonna go to another one. Why endings are in my head right now. Literally, endings and beginnings. So, literally, my assistant who worked with me almost 3 years just left. Her last day was Friday. Hello, everyone. Hello, everybody who's just joining now. She just left last Friday, and we had a great experience together with her and my team, and she handled the ending of her time with my company really well. And I'm gonna guess that the people who work with me would agree with that. When it was time for her to go, she gave me a month's notice. Hello, everybody. 2 weeks is really not enough, especially if someone's valuable, because it's hard to put on the pause button and search for someone. She gave me a month's time, and I needed a month's time, and it was so wonderful to have that amount of time. She helped me search for someone, as did the rest of my team. She made the ending as positive as it could be, and we will remember that. I will always remember it. I'm sure the rest of my team will remember it because it was conscious and intentional and positive. One of the things that I say, and the quote for this week is my quote: endings are more important than beginnings. I realized that years ago. Endings truly are more important than beginnings. And I say that because we naturally show up at our best, most of us, at the beginning of something. But what about the end? Endings are more important than beginnings. So in this case, all of the things that my assistant did leading up to the moment that she left were to support us, to support my business, to support me, to support the team, to set up the next person for success so that it would be a smooth transition. We will always remember that, always, because the sweetness of that is going to remain. Now, I have been in business for many years, and prior to that, had been a boss for many years, uh, when I had a job working for another company, I had plenty of people who left and didn't leave well. I had one person who just walked out and never came back. A young man who was upset about something and he stormed out the door. I remember that. Of course you remember that because it was jarring, right? But isn't it better to remember the sweetness? Even the bow tied around the experience with my assistant who just left is she certainly didn't need to do this, but she told me, "I'm sending you something. I want you to go pick it up," because I often now work from home, but my office is downtown. And I got a message that there was a package, so I drove downtown to get it. And she sent me a beautiful bouquet of flowers that are yellow, my favorite color. Thoughtful. Endings are more important than beginnings. I'm going to remember those with sweetness, just the thoughtfulness of that experience, which, by the way, I tell the people who work with me that they're all my angels and they stay with me, even though they go off and do different things. The angels are still part of the family. When you behave that way, you want to keep folks in the fold, right? And I think it's worth exploring because so often this is not what we do. So often we just are moving on. Well, I've got to rush into the next experience, so I don't have time to think about that. Even like for me, in part of this experience, I hired someone and I interviewed a number of wonderful people. And I will be writing a note to each one of those people, thanking them for applying for the job, letting them know that if there's something that could work in the future, that I will let I will offer that. And just ending that engagement in as positive a way as possible. That's my commitment. Okay, why does that matter? How many of you have applied for a job, just using that example for starters, and you didn't get it, you never heard anything? You just figured out over time, well, I must not have gotten that because I haven't heard back. And how does that make you feel? Or if you get a form letter, thank you, but no thank you, and it feels cold, distant, and you had a personal interview, but it didn't feel personal. I never want to create a situation where I am diminishing someone's light. So just because something doesn't work doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It means this may not be the exact right fit, right? Not being the right fit for the moment should not take away from your value. Think about that. So if you are in the position, because I just talked about the one side with my assistant who just left, my responsibility with all the other people is to make sure that I give them a boost even as they're not going to join the team. Because that's part of an ending too, ending that experience. It's subtle, but it's real. So I'd like, Fallon, can you put the quote up on the screen? Endings are more important than beginnings. That is our focus today. That is our quote that I want us to look at. I don't usually have my own quotes, but this one is a good one, and I wanted to make sure that you look at it. Sometimes it's the simplest things that make a difference. And I know of people who have ended love relationships. Oh, I'm so mad. I'm done. This is over. And sometimes, especially out of emotion, they can crush the other person emotionally. Have you ever done that? Even if it wasn't unintentional, by talking badly about the person to others, by just being mean, choosing to say something or do something that you know is going to impact that person negatively, because you really know the person, saying or doing something that it will cut like a knife. It's so easy to do that when you come to know someone really well. But is that the right thing to do? Do you want to annihilate someone just because you don't want to be with them anymore? And if the answer is yes, I want to encourage you to pause. Pause, don't do a thing. You know that rule of, you when you're angry, you can write the note, but don't send it yet. Don't deliver it yet. I want you to think about endings and having a pause before you get to the ending. So you have an experience. You believe it's time for this experience to end, whatever it is, whatever the relationship is. If it's between you and another human being, how do you end it? Pause first. If you're angry, if you're emotional, sort through your emotions so that you can figure out, what are you truly feeling deep down inside, what's going on. Take the time to sort through it. Take the time to figure out what you think the those on the other side have done and what you have done. What is your responsibility in this moment? And if you really unpack what has occurred slowly enough so that you can see the whole picture, not just your side, then you can often find some kind of sweetness, something redeeming about the person, the engagement, etc. And you can leave gracefully. This is so important. Why? Because if you leave by igniting a fire, the fire doesn't go out just because you walk away. Sometimes we're so upset, just filled with emotion, and we turn, we pivot and go in the other direction, and we don't pay attention to what we're leaving behind or how we're leaving someone or a situation behind. Someone once described it as roadkill, that I was done with this person and I let them have it and they were roadkill to me. Okay, have you ever seen an animal that's dead on the road? Discarded? You don't want to do that to another person. Not really. Endings are more important than beginnings. When you understand that, you search for tenderness within your being. You search for softness, for a soft gaze at the situation. So let's use another example. What if someone didn't do something well, made a big mistake, and because of that big mistake, the relationship has to end? This could be, it could be any situation. It can be work, it can be family, it could be neighbor, whatever it is. How do you let the person know what happened with tenderness and clarity? Both are important. And see, what a lot of people will do when something bad happens, rather than providing feedback, because that's what I'm getting at, rather than providing feedback, they would just say nothing, smile, this isn't working out, bye, walk away and provide no feedback. I mean, if you don't give feedback, then the person can't grow. So see, to me, part of the beauty of a good ending is that if you are looking to uplift and tell the truth in a moment, then what happens is feedback, fine tuning of understanding of whatever the situation is key. How do you provide feedback? This didn't work because of this. I'm not quite sure about how this was handled, but here are the things that didn't work and what makes this a deal breaker and things you can work on. If you say it with tenderness, with compassion, which you can only get to by sitting with it and allowing yourself to process it and think about how can the other person receive it. There are a lot of steps in sharing information so that people can receive it and learn from it and grow. If you're harsh, if you're mean, if you are dismissive, then it can feel like a slap and they can't hear you because it just hurts. That's not what you want to do. What you want to do is find a way to share information so that the other person is willing and able to receive it and can grow from it. That requires contemplation, not knee jerk. And so if something happens in the moment and you're feeling a lot of energy around it and you feel like you have to say something, you could say, I want to revisit this later because I need to sit with this for a minute. I don't feel good about what's happening in this moment. Let's pause and come back to it. So you're putting a pause on an ending. That's an okay thing to do. You put a pause on the ending, you sit with it, you look at it from all angles. And when you have an understanding of what happened and what could have happened differently, then you can go back and say, okay, I'm ready now. Are you ready? Can we talk about this? And by the way, this works whether you're talking to someone who hierarchically is above you, lateral to you, or below you. If you are speaking with clarity and kindness, and you've processed it and you've figured out how can I deliver this so that it will be heard, you should be okay, even if it's your boss. Because you want to ask permission first. May I talk to you about something that's sensitive? And then you need to get a yes. When you get the yes, then you go in with what you believe has occurred and why, and whatever information you want to share. Even if it's awkward, which it usually is, you want to share it in a way that you believe the other person can hear it. And I'm calling this part of endings because it's moment that we have endings all the time. They're endings of meetings, they're endings of events, endings of relationships, endings of whatever the engagements might be. All of those endings are important, believe it or not. I was talking to someone recently about beginnings, and he's a leader in a group, but is often quiet. And my contention is that as one of the leaders, it's important for his voice to be heard too. So for him, it was really key to remember his role in the beginning of an experience and his role at the end of an experience. So when the meeting is almost over, when the engagement is almost over, that lovely moment of saying something that captures a sweet goodbye, the thank you, gratitude, thank you all for being with us. Everybody knows what they have to do. Please go and have a great day, whatever it might be, but just something that sends people off with good wishes and begins with good wishes. They're both important. But again, usually in the beginning, we show up. If you find yourself not doing that, it's the bookends. Be great in the beginning, be great at the end, and yeah, be great in the middle. Putting the holistic experience together as something positive, even if it's hard, even if it's delivering bad news, is so much easier for everyone to experience if you do it with grace. My sister was telling me the other day, a few months ago, at her company, there was the need to do some layoffs. And she was overseeing this layoff experience, and she was talking to a large group of people on in a virtual platform like this. And needing to let people know that there were going to be a sizable number of layoffs. And she said she framed it to let people understand what was happening and why, and how people would be cared for as this transition was happening. And later, she said a couple things that I thought were really interesting. One person contacted her directly and said, I would be willing to take a pay cut, and I bet you other people would too, just to make sure that people don't have to be let go. Because what you said was so important. I want to make sure everybody could stay. Very sweet. Another person, uh, uh, text message or however the message got to her, saying, I never have felt so good about possibly losing my job. And the reason was a lot of care had gone into how this was going to be handled, how the message was going to be shared, and just the vision for the whole experience. I thought that was such a wonderful thing. When she told me, I sat with it for a while because this is endings. Yes, sometimes you do have to end relationships. Sometimes you do have to let people go for whatever the reason, but you don't have to annihilate them. You don't have to make them roadkill. You don't have to make them feel bad about themselves. Even if they aren't good at whatever it is, which is usually the case if it's an ending, you celebrate what is good about them. Let them know what they can improve upon. And when you walk away, make sure they're standing. Make sure they feel good enough about themselves that they can continue on their path, that you didn't help to create a broken wing bird, that you didn't harm someone to the extent that they just have to stop and they're immobilized. You don't want to do that. Even if you think you do, even if you're so fired up, you feel like, I have to. No, you don't. You don't. And guess what? When you do something like that, and I know because I've done it before, I've made the mistake as a young woman, really being unkind to someone at the point of an ending. I regret it to this day. I was unkind. I was mean. I it was it was completely unnecessary. And I remember because you remember those things. You remember when you don't treat people well. And it's not worth it. I promise you, it absolutely is not worth it. It takes just a few more minutes for you to pause, look at the whole situation, think about the other person. What can you do or say to uplift that other person, even when you are saying goodbye? I remember I spoke at an event for a group of young women who wanted to pledge my sorority. And I was the keynote speaker, and there were at least 500 women gathered to hoping that they would be able to join. And it was just not possible. They can't have 500 people join at one time. The most, I think, was about 50 people could join. So almost everybody there was not going to be invited. Not because they weren't lovely people, there just wasn't room. And I looked out at this sea of beautiful faces, and it was kind of heartbreaking because I knew they weren't able to join. And so as I shared the wonderful things that I know about my sorority, I also said, ladies, look around. You know you're not all going to be chosen. But I hope that you all recognize that you are valuable, that you are beautiful, that you deserve to have all the love and joy and sisterhood that your heart can hold. And even if you don't get to join at this time, that doesn't mean you aren't valuable. I felt that I had to say this because here is this group of beautiful women who are all kind of shaking in their boots. I want to be part of this. We may not all get to be part of whatever it is that we long for, but when we treat ourselves with respect, when we treat others with respect, and when we close doors with grace and care, our hearts feel better and the hearts of those around us feel better. So endings are more important than beginnings. I want you to practice your endings. This week, as you are leaving your home, this week, as you are ending a meeting, ending a conversation on the phone, ending an email, what can you close with that sweetens the moment? What can you say or do that uplifts you and those with whom you are engaged? Pay attention to that. And then at the end of each day, notice if you feel a little bit better about yourself and if you feel better about the way you've treated others. I think you will. Thank you so much for being with me today. Until next time, have a great day and make it count. Namaste.